Released for the NES in 1991 by Data East, Captain America and the Avengers is a superhero action game based on the Marvel Comics team of the same name. It brought together Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, and Vision in a side-scrolling adventure, allowing players to control some of the most iconic heroes in the Marvel Universe. While the NES version was a more limited adaptation of the original arcade hit, it brought Marvel's superhero team to homes, offering fans a chance to fight classic villains and save the day in 8-bit glory. The game was originally developed as an arcade game by Data East, known for popular arcade hits like Bad Dudes and Burger Time. The arcade version's success prompted Data East to bring the Avengers to home consoles, including the NES, Sega Genesis, and Super Nintendo. Translating an arcade experience to the NES was no small feat, as the console's limited hardware required significant adaptations. While the arcade version boasted colorful visuals and more complex mechanics, the NES version had to simplify both gameplay and graphics to fit within the 8-bit system's constraints. The NES port was handled with an emphasis on the fundamentals of arcade-style gameplay, mixing platforming elements with beat-em-up mechanics. The characters retained some of their unique abilities and appearances, and the game's overall focus remained true to the action-packed spirit of the original. Despite the limitations, Captain America and the Avengers on NES offered players an enjoyable superhero experience, adding to the growing trend of comic book-inspired games of the era. Players face off against Red Skull, who has gathered a group of supervillains and is on a mission to conquer the world. The Avengers must stop him and his powerful allies, which include known villains such as Klaw, the Grim Reaper, and Whirlwind. Each villain has their own set of powers and challenges, creating a unique experience in each stage. The game doesn't delve deeply into the backstory or motivations of the characters, focusing instead on the action. However, it faithfully captures the classic comic book essence of heroes fighting to protect the world from powerful foes. The story provides a perfect setup for the action-packed gameplay, with each stage representing a mission to take down one of Red Skull's minions before ultimately confronting the mastermind himself. Captain America and the Avengers is a side-scrolling action game with elements of beat-em-up gameplay. Players can choose between 4 Avengers: Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, and Vision. Each character has unique attacks and abilities. Captain America can throw his iconic shield, allowing for ranged attacks. Iron Man has a powerful energy blast. Hawkeye uses his bow for long-range attacks. Vision has a unique phasing ability. The variety in playstyles allows players to pick a character that best fits their preferred approach, whether it's close combat power or ranged attacks. Players advance through a series of levels, each filled with enemies, obstacles, and platforming sections. The gameplay mainly involves punching, jumping, and using each hero's special ability to defeat enemies. Though simple, the action is intense, with enemies coming from all directions, forcing players to stay on their toes. Each level ends with a boss fight against one of Red Skull's villains. These battles require players to learn each boss's unique patterns and attacks, adding a strategic element. While the game's controls are straightforward, timing and patience are essential to mastering these encounters. Throughout the levels, players can pick up power-ups that grant health, extra lives, and other bonuses. Some power-ups are unique to specific characters, encouraging players to explore each hero's strengths and weaknesses. In true arcade spirit, the NES version includes a 2-player mode, allowing players to team up as 2 Avengers to take down the forces of evil together. Playing cooperatively changes the dynamics of the game, as teamwork is essential to overcoming the hordes of enemies and tough bosses. As with many arcade-to-console adaptations, Captain America and the Avengers had to undergo substantial changes to fit onto the NES. The graphics, sound, and some gameplay mechanics had to be simplified, leading to a shorter and less complex game compared to the arcade version. Nevertheless, the NES port captured the core experience, delivering an engaging title for Marvel fans. While the NES version was a straightforward platformer, other versions on systems like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo included different levels and power-ups, making each version unique. The Genesis version, for instance, was considered the closest to the arcade in terms of graphics and gameplay. Released in the early 1990s, it was one of the first major Marvel superhero games, setting the stage for a wave of comic-inspired titles that followed. It helped solidify superheroes as viable video game characters and contributed to the growth of Marvel's presence in gaming. While the Avengers roster has grown significantly in recent years, This NES game focused on a small but popular lineup from the comics at the time. Including heroes like Vision and Hawkeye, who were lesser known at the time, added variety and helped introduce these characters to a broader audience. The game features well-known Marvel villains such as the Red Skull, Klaw, and Whirlwind. Though they appear as simple 8-bit sprites, these villains provided a nostalgic nod to longtime comic book readers, while giving players a recognizable set of enemies to fight against. Captain America and the Avengers on NES didn't achieve the same critical acclaim as the arcade or Genesis versions, primarily due to the limitations of the 8-bit hardware. However, it holds a nostalgic place in the hearts of Marvel fans who grew up with the NES. The game was challenging, and while its gameplay mechanics were simple, they successfully captured the feel of a classic superhero adventure, with each character bringing their unique powers to the battlefield. The game's appeal lies in its status as one of the first Marvel team-based video games, where players could embody their favorite Avengers in a cooperative environment. It laid a foundation that later superhero games would expand upon, eventually leading to the highly complex and visually stunning superhero games we have today. Though it may seem simplistic by modern standards, it remains an important chapter in Marvel's video game history, marking a time when superhero games were just beginning to gain traction. The game's influence is evident in the later, more sophisticated Marvel games, showing how early adaptations like this helped pave the way for superhero gaming to become a major genre. With its team-based approach, challenging gameplay, and roster of beloved Marvel heroes, Captain America and the Avengers on NES is a testament to the early days of superhero video games. Though constrained by 8-bit technology, it managed to deliver an exciting experience for fans and stands as a nostalgic reminder of the evolution of Marvel in the gaming world.